I hope you're hungry because you're listening to Everybody Eats.
Welcome everyone to another episode of the Everybody Eats podcast. It's your host, Bensky Belazaire. We have our co-host, Edom Ekpe, and we are here with a really special, amazing guest, Miss Nova Lorraine. Thank you very much for joining us on today's episode.
Thank you for having me.
For sure. So, for all our listeners, make sure that you follow us on all platforms: Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. We're on there. Everybody Eats Podcast. And we'll get into today's episode. So, Nova and I, we connected in a fairly different manner. We actually connected on LinkedIn. And then you reached out, I guess, about the podcast. And then I messaged you back and you offered your help. How can you help? How can you be involved? So we had a phone call, and then I asked her to be a guest on the podcast, and here we are. So, like I said, and we just finished recording a different episode, DMs go a long way. So make sure that you're reaching out. Definitely make sure that you're reaching out to people, and you never know who's going to respond and who's going to be able to help you out. So for all listeners, DMs go a long way, right? So, Miss Nova, would you be able to just briefly introduce yourself? Where are you from? What do you do? And then we'll get into today's episode.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I am Nova Lorraine, as you mentioned, and I am the founder and editor-in-chief of Raine magazine. I am also a podcast host. My podcast is called Unleash Your Supernova, and it was recently nominated for an award at the New Media Film Festival in LA.
Congrats.
Thank you. I'm so excited about that. I'm also an award-winning fashion designer and advisor and consultant to creative founders and brands. And in my free time, laugh, I write and I act. So where I'm from, I was born in Jamaica, and I'm one of six. And my parents immigrated here when I was a baby, and I actually did not become a U.S. citizen until I was in my mid-20s.
Oh, wow.
And so I was an immigrant, a yadi. and what was the third question you asked? I forgot. I'm sorry.
I think that's pretty much it. It was pretty much introducing yourself. What do you do? So I guess we'll just go into the next question. So I know in the you're very involved in the fashion industry, and I remember when we had the call, you briefly described your journey getting, I guess, to where you actually are now. Briefly describing, your schooling, your fashion into the magazine space. So I guess if you could just briefly highlight that story, like how did you get involved into doing what you're doing now, involved in the magazine and in the fashion industry?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So this is our 13th year for Raine, and I launched Raine about 5 years into running my fashion company. But when I started out, when I was planning my career in high school, which is so funny how we plan our careers in high school. Oh, how that changes so much. But anyhow, I wanted to go into medicine. I wanted to become a doctor. And so fast forward a few years, I was accepted into a PhD program for clinical psychology. And so that's what I was doing, and I was on my way. And one day I had a strong epiphany that how I was going to help people was through my love of fashion. And just to set the stage here, I lived in the middle of Connecticut. I'm from a traditional Caribbean household where you pick one of 5 careers, okay? And it's not art or fashion.
Nurse.
Nurse, doctor, engineer, lawyer, and I think teacher, right? That's it. And so where did this come from? Obviously it was a divine calling, and it was so overwhelming I could not ignore it. And so with the help of my advisors and department chairs, I finished up with my master's, moved to New York and enrolled at the Fashion Institute of Technology. And for those of you that are in fashion, you know that as FIT.
Mm-hmm.
And so I graduated with a design degree specializing in intimate apparel, and moved outside of New York into the DC metro area. My husband was training, doing his residency in urology there at Howard, and I spent about 3 years there in corporate, doing interior design, studying entrepreneurship and marketing. And because I knew deep down that one day I would return back to New York. I didn't know how or when, but I was very intentional. I knew I was going to be back in New York. I was going to launch this fashion company. I was going to become the next Ralph Lauren, Donna Karan, Calvin Klein, some of the big brands at the time. And sure enough, 3 years later, I was back in New York, and with the amazing support of family and friends, launched Lorraine. And the funny thing is, or not so funny, depending on how you look at it, we moved to New York late August of 2001. You see where I'm going here.
Yeah.
I launched my company, my collection, along the Hudson River in Westchester, New York, the most perfect sunny day on September 1st, 2001. And 10 days later, the world changed, at least for us in New York and many places in the country. And so here I am, young designer in New York, and trying to make my way, which was really interesting during that time period, especially being of color and designing within the haute couture space, which was not a common combination. And I did that for about 5 years, and very grateful for the recognition I received along the way, which included Best Haute Couture of the Year award, nominations by the Fashion Group International, placements of my product on The View and Essence Magazine, Italian Vogue, and various films. And along that journey, as I was meeting some of the most incredible talents in fashion, culture, and technology, which is all tied together in my opinion, I started consulting accidentally. I would meet other creatives and founders, I would share ideas with them, and they would hire me to help execute them. So I've been doing that for the last 2 decades, and it's all been word of mouth and very organic. I truly love helping people. And 5 years into my journey of entrepreneurship, of creative entrepreneurship, I had the aha moment when the idea of Raine magazine came to me. And that's when I put the puzzle pieces together of that vision that I had in graduate school, and how I was going to be able to help all of these people through my love of fashion. And by creating a fashion-forward publication that covered those 3 areas that I mentioned, fashion, culture, and technology, and being the Sherlock Holmes of uncovering the next big names in those areas, I felt that I could truly bring a platform to life that was committed in helping these individuals grow. And Raine was born, and here we are 13 years later.
Wow. That's an amazing story. Definitely.
Thank you.
Definitely. So, Edom, do you have anything you want to ask?
Going through your journey, what would you say is probably, I guess I'm going to ask 2 ends of the spectrum. The most challenging thing that, I'm sure may have made you want to give up. And then on the other end of that, what would you say happened, or what day did you realize, what day, other than the day you felt like you had that strong, all right, sorry, let me start over.
Yeah, no problem.
What day, what moment would you say you felt like giving up? And then on the other end of that, what moment did you feel like you should continue this and keep it up?
So I would like to say that there were moments, many moments.
Yeah.
As most entrepreneurs realize, while you're in it anyway, maybe going into it, it's a different story, but while you're in it, it is truly a roller coaster of highs and lows.
Yeah. And
I don't know if that ever goes away, because I from what I see with not only myself and others that I've met and become great friends with, we tend to be perfectionists. And as creators, there's always something to create and to make it the best version of itself. But going back to addressing, I think, what you're getting at in terms of the challenges and obstacles, there's a few that really stand out in different phases of my journey. So when I was in design school, my husband was about 4 hours away, as I mentioned, and I had to commute every weekend to see him, which was challenging as my classmates were in the classroom and the labs working. I was on a bus. And so I had to finish everything within a shorter amount of time,
That's
all
low.
while juggling a job and multiple internships. Well, 2 or 3 months before, actually 2 months before graduation, I find out that I'm pregnant. And that first trimester, most women experience the most challenging symptoms of fatigue and nausea and other things. And I had them, think about the extreme, I had them. And here I am in this extremely competitive program right before graduation, and I could barely get up in the morning or stay up during the day, eat anything, complete my assignments, attend classes. And that was challenging because everyone is fighting for that golden ticket at the end of the semester, the dream internship job or the dream job or the dream internship. And I could barely get to class. And so my professors were very gracious and understanding, and I was able to graduate and still maintain my grades, at least at a decent level. But at the same time, this vision I had and this path that I was building up so aggressively that whole year and landing, like I said, either the dream internship or job was suddenly taken away. And New York, by yourself as a parent, in the fashion industry, that wasn't going to work so well. And so I moved back to DC, where my husband was training, and had to just figure out, how am I going to continue this dream I had? I mean, it was right there. And here I am in DC, not the most fashion forward city. And but it was just holding on to that vision and just knowing deep down, and I'm sure there are moments when you just know, like there's no doubt in your bones. Like I just knew I was getting back to New York. And so what did I do? I shifted my attention. Instead of sulking and saying, why is me? I really embraced the joy, the little bundle of joy I was carrying, and said, okay, well, this is just a time for me to plan and build up some skills I don't have. And that's what I did. And the universe conspired and got me back to New York City. Another moment that I feel was extremely challenging as a designer looking to build a luxury brand. There's a lot of money involved in doing that. And I would get so close all the time to sources of investors or financial institutions to the yes. And it was like I would get to the final 10 yards, and then the answer was no. And I'm like, are you serious? You like the business plan, you like the product, you like me, what is the deal? What and why at the very last moment? And that was so frustrating because it takes so much energy and so much effort just to get in front of the right people and to have a successful pitch and all of that. And I one day just said, I am tired of putting my dreams in the hands of others, and I'm just going to, I'm going to be the one to forge my path. And I'm just going to do it the way I can do it. And so I moved my showroom from 7th Avenue to Westchester, and then expanded into a store. As my family grew, I had 4 children by the time I opened my store.
Wow.
Ranging from a month to 8 years old. So, and then I decided that I was going to launch a magazine without any background in working for a magazine. I mean, I had a consulting gig as an editor for a publishing house, but that was it. And I remember sharing this dream, this idea that I had with a really well-known owner and publisher of a magazine in the area. And I said, I admired her so much. And I was like, I too want to, open my own magazine one day, or launch my own magazine one day. And she looked at me as if I was maybe like an ant on the ground. And just said, pretty much, okay, little girl, whatever, don't even think about it. And that hurt me to the core, because I admired this magazine for so many years, and here I am, I finally get a chance to meet the publisher and the founder.
Yeah.
And she completely dismissed me. But my nature is, if you were going to say I can't do something, my response is watch me. Yeah. And so, I feel like the best revenge is success. And so I was like, okay, you just literally put the nail in the coffin for me in terms of saying I don't have a choice but to create this magazine and make it successful. Yeah. So that was another challenging period where I could have said, you know what, she's right. Who do I think I am? But I got over it and said, nope, I'm marching on. And so, I don't know, the list goes on and on, but those are some moments that jump out at me.
Nah, definitely. I think that's amazing. There are so many points that I want to kind of just briefly touch on that you made. The first thing was just like, I love seeing that tenacity, and especially like I think it's very appropriate in celebrating Women's History Month of just, highlighting that tenacity of, you said that found out you were pregnant while, during your last semester. I can't imagine, like, everyone, whether it's graduate school, obviously graduate school is a little bit more pressure, but I know just like from, undergrad not too long ago, I know that usually that last semester is when things heat up. Everything has to be perfect. So that added, that added pressure, I couldn't imagine. But, that's amazing. And then also just seeing, that's not the first time I've heard of a story where someone either looks up to a specific person or a company, and then when they finally get the chance to meet them, they feel like they've been dismissed. I feel like that's not the first time I've heard that story. So I actually just like hearing it, but that was probably the first time I'm hearing it in person though. So, seeing that I can't imagine, like, that hurts, I think we all have role models and people we look up to, just naturally. Right. So, and having that, that feeling of dismissal is not good, but I love the reaction where it's like, all right, well, watch me, or like, I bet, like, that's the way I see it. Like, you think I can't do it?
Did you say I couldn't do it?
Like, bet, watch.
That's
watch.
Right.
So I love hearing that. I think that's really encouraging that's encouraging for myself, and especially for the listeners. Like, you heard it from right here. Like, if life tells you no, right, or you feel like someone is maybe holding you back, or if you have that idea that you really want to pursue, like, you're not gonna take no for an answer from anybody, right? The only person stopping you is yourself, and
right.
We just had a guest that says, who said, 100% things that you do get done, right? So all it is all it's about is taking those actions, no matter what the world throws at you or whatever people throw at you. So I think
that's right.
I think that's amazing. So I think that'll conclude this first segment. We'll wrap this up, and then we'll go into our second segment of the word of the day that Edom has that quote for us. Yes. All right, we are back for our second segment for the quote of the day. Edom, he has that quote, so we'll guess who it's by and where it's from.
All right, I'm pulling it up. Alright, y'all ready?
Yes, I am.
Yep.
Alright. What would men be without women? Scarce, sir, mighty scarce.
Sounds like it's from a movie.
I know. Sounds like it's from Hamilton.
Nah. That person is no longer here. If you want to quote, they are no longer living.
No longer living.
It's a guy.
Where would men be without women?
Would it be Sherlock Holmes's running mate?
Watson?
No.
No. I don't think y'all gonna get this one.
All right, tell us.
Oh, nah, Bessie got a guess.
Man, no longer living. Man, I really have no clue. Is he like a president?
No, not a president.
No.
They're not a president. Not like his profession wasn't anything. This person is well known, but his profession wasn't anything, too special.
All right, give us the industry at least. What was the industry?
He used pen and paper for his.
He's an author.
Like that was like. He was a writer and author, so.
I got no idea. Dr. Seuss.
Really? No. It would have rhymed.
Yeah, I really have no idea.
Okay, and nobody else? No other takers?
Nah.
Okay, so it was Mark Twain.
Mark Twain.
Twain.
Is that from a book?
Known, but
is it from a book?
I just think it was a quote. I don't think it was in a book.
Got it.
So, what would men be without women? Scarce, sir, mighty scarce.
Amen.
And, on that point, I would not be here without my mom. I probably honestly would have been in, like, Nigeria or something. If it wasn't for my mom, if I'm really honest. I would not have been here.
No,
so I could speak to that.
Definitely. I'm a mama's boy from the jump, and I'm proud. Mama's boy, and I'm proud. So, but in seriousness, just it's great being able to have Nova on the podcast, and all the women we've had on the podcast have been bosses, right? So shout out to Rua Hamid, shout out to Carmine. I think it's great that this month we're definitely highlighting some great women, and just making sure that we understand that there's never any need to hate, and going back to mom, like when she listens to this episode, she's gonna like this. But a lot of things I learned just about my job, and a lot of things I've learned about just like social interactions and things, like I learned a lot of that from my mom, because she always making sure that I'm interacting with people in a nice and polite way, right? And it seems kind of simple, but she would always tell me work stories of something that happened at work, how people interacted, and she always instills in me making sure that just as simple as I'll come into work, making sure I say good morning, right? Like just simple things like that. Like she's always making sure, right, when it comes to interaction with either like my managers or people on her level or people below her, because she's a manager at her job. So but she's always telling me, examples and experiences, how to interact with people, that work with you, maybe people that are higher than you, lower than you, people, making sure that you're greeting people always nice, and always telling me these lessons. And it was funny because as a kid or while I was in school, they didn't always apply. But then as soon as I got a job and literally I saw everything that she's been telling me, it was like, oh, this is nuts, right? And it's like, obviously mom is always right. But, that's just something that I can never take for granted, because that's like, even just when it comes to networking, that relates back to just like simple networking, and when you being an entrepreneur, interacting with people, like that's a huge part of the business, interaction, networking. And so that's just something that she's ingrained in me and instilled in me. So love you, mama. But I think that's just something that's really really important, and definitely not to take for granted.
And of course, without women, who's giving birth to the babies?
That's a fact. That's a fact. That's why we be scarce. Definitely. All right, so we'll go into our final segment after another quick break. Welcome back to the last segment of today's episode. So on today, we will be discussing two posts from Instagram. The first one is from Ash Cash, or on Instagram, I am Ash Cash. So actually, I started watching his content through EYL, Earn Your Leisure. Shout out to them. I gotta bring them up all the time. So for this post, maybe I'll actually have this post playing in the video so listeners can see it as well. But for this post, essentially he talks about you need to do less asking and more telling. So in the video, he goes on to tell a story about how he was actually trying to sell his friend's mixtape. So when he went into the barber shop, he was asking the barber like, "Oh, can I give you this mixtape?" And the barber, really wasn't about it. They didn't want it. And then his boy went to the same barbershop and pretty much told the barber, like, hey, I'm putting my mixtapes in here. And then whenever people buy them, we could split it. And then he came out, and then, Ash Cash was like, oh, like, how'd you do that? And he was saying his OG told him, like, you have to do less asking and more telling. So then he goes on to say how he went into banking, and in banking, how he was setting up, helping people financially. He was more, instead of necessarily first he would ask what their needs are, and then based on their needs, he was telling them the product or service that best meets their needs, right? So instead of asking them, "Oh, do you want this product or anything like that?" He was telling them, "This is the product that you need," right? So, and then saying that's called assumptive selling, and pretty much set out to say this. I think definitely as an entrepreneur, right? With the point of being an entrepreneur, you have a product you want to sell, right? So I think the idea of doing less asking, more telling, being a little bit more assertive, that's just something that I really dwelled on. I really dwelled in my head. Just different ways that, if you do want to sell a product, right? Different ways of selling tips, and also ways of, I think it ties back into confidence a little bit as well, right? If you have a product that you truly believe in, it's perfectly fine to go tell someone, "Hey, you need this product in your life," right? And it comes back with confidence, right? If you're confident in what you do and what you have, you can have that confidence to go up to someone and be like, "Hey, based off what you need this," right? And I'm not necessarily asking you, I'm telling you, right? So I think that's just something that really resonated with me. So what I know you two saw the post. So what were your takeaways, or how did you feel about it? So I guess Norma, you can go first, and Edom, you can take it after.
Yeah, so I kind of chuckled because I literally was on the phone with an individual earlier today that literally told me that we're having a call next week and we'll discuss more of your needs then. And by the way, send me this, and that. And I was like, whoa, what just happened here? I was like, okay, when are you available? I was like, I literally just agreed for him to be my advisor. So it does work. I just had that experience today. I think a couple things. I think it goes back to storytelling. And the gentleman that went in afterwards had a story, and in his story, he's leaving a product that he believed, as you mentioned, had value, and this other person was going to be another character in the story. And that's it. And so he left. And I think if we focus on, like you said, the value that we're providing, and we really believe that we're helping people, that's what's going to shine through, right? And I think the challenge that entrepreneurs have, and creatives especially, if it's a product that they personally produced, then it's not just, asking someone to buy, insurance. You're not the one who created the policy, but asking someone to buy your fashion design or your painting or this new tech gadget that you created. It's literally an extension of you.
Yeah.
And so that no hits so much harder than you going around selling new cable, accounts, for like Xfinity or something like that. And so how do you get past that? And I think that if we sort of separate our ego from the product, and it's a lot easier because we see it as a personal form of rejection. But if we are like, no, listen, I created this tech gadget, I created this app, I created this garment because I truly believe it's going to make this person happier or smarter or cooler or whatever it is, that's what we need to focus on and pay attention to.
Definitely. I love that. And Edom?
Well, I feel like everything is like a business deal in a sense. Having someone tell you, hey, I don't think, in the case of the CDs, I don't think this is worth putting in my barbershop on the stand because you weren't aggressive enough to tell them, like, hey, I'm going to put this here. And then he went and in the post, his friend went in on his behalf and negotiated, hey, keep it here. We're going to sell it. And then whatever happens, we split it 50-50. So on top of not only telling him what was going to happen, and, if he had just told him that and the guy straight up said no, he negotiated and said, hey, you're also going to benefit from this this transaction, from what's going on. And just in real life, although maybe not all parties can benefit, I think the notion of telling someone or telling multiple people how much you're worth and what your product is, it gets you much farther than timidly approaching them and saying, oh, you know, I think you should this, I think you should that. Because a lot of people, they will try to put a price tag on something you worked on.
Yeah.
You know? So I really think firmness and on top of that, confidence in your product and what you're doing goes a long way. And even outside of business, just today I was teaching my sister how to drive. Confidence really plays such a big key in that as well. You know, for example, you know, she's not a confident driver. She's never driven before, but just the parallels in both is just really just amazing.
I think those are excellent points, and it brought something to mind. The confidence piece is huge, and you know, part of I think a solution in sort of getting there as the owner, creator, founder is to kind of detach yourself from it, and you know that whatever is meant to come to you will come to you. And so if the person says no, that wasn't meant for you. Just keep it moving. You know, if you went in with 110%. And if they felt that it wasn't going to serve them, you wouldn't want them to have it anyway, because they're only going to bash it, you know? Yeah. And so sort of just being confident in the fact that those individuals that need to see the value will see it when you present it in the right way. And there was another point that came to mind in, giving before you expect to receive. Mm-hmm. And so the gentleman that brought the CDs in, he literally left product there. So that in itself is an act of trust. And he didn't say, okay, I want you to sell these for me and I'll be back. Or as the gentleman said, can you please buy these for me? Or he said, no, I'm going to give you some of whatever I get. And I'm not asking you for anything right now. And I think as entrepreneurs, if we keep that in mind, to be in a position of giving before expecting anything in return, then we're going to see more abundance. And also coming from a place of abundance. Like the second guy came in and said, I know we're going to make money, because if we weren't, there's nothing to split with you. So I'm just saying, the money I'm going to make, I'm going to split it with you. That's coming from a place of abundance, and who does not want to be a part of that? Yeah. So also, I think, in whatever that story is you're telling, to put it in a framework of how the person is going to get, you know, or be more prosperous, or, you know, like I said, whatever that value is that you're providing to them.
Definitely.
Would you say an aspect of humility would you say he was humble in the act of being willing to split 50-50 with the owner of the store?
I don't know if I would describe that as humble. I don't know if that came across. Not that he was egocentric or narcissistic. Yeah. I feel that he truly believed that this was something that would sell. Therefore, I'm going to give you some of what I'm going to make. And I think it's that confidence and coming from that place of abundance, and also being willing to give something. And all of those things work. You know, at the end of the day, we're selling to people. We're not selling to machines. And if we take the time to understand how people act and behave, or just understand ourselves, how would we want to be approached? How would we respond? And sort of reverse roles, I think that we would approach those situations so much differently.
Definitely. I think one thing, you know, I think for people to fully understand also, when we say assertive, like you can be assertive and not be rude, right? Like, I don't want people to think that being assertive or telling people means you have to be rude, like shove it in their face. There's always like a finesse and a strategy to it, right? There's always an approach. But you could still be assertive, right, and still nice, right? You can still be assertive and confident without, you know, rubbing someone off the wrong way. And similar to what you said, you know, if someone doesn't buy your product or anything like that, right? I think something as an entrepreneur, this covers like a couple of points right here. It comes as an entrepreneur. If someone doesn't buy your product, don't take it as necessarily like a personal attack, because it's easy, like you said, like sometimes it's easy to feel like that, right? Like if I'm selling, you know, if I'm selling t-shirts, right, or say, you know, if you do makeup, right, or if you design art, if someone doesn't buy your product, they're not it's not always a personal attack. And sometimes it could easily feel like that, like, oh, like you said, it's gonna hurt a little bit different than if I'm selling a product for someone else or I'm working for a company and they tell me no. It's like, all right, sure, all right, but like, hey, like I put work on this and I'm offering to sell it or I'm offering to have it and you tell me no. Yeah, that can hurt sometimes, but you have to be able to move on from those and be able to understand that, like, hey, if they didn't want your product now, then I have that same approach. Be like, all right, bet, watch me. I'm gonna go sell it to someone else, and soon you're gonna want it, and you're not gonna have it as sweet, or maybe have it, maybe it's gonna be more expensive later when it has, when you really want it, right? So I think it goes back to having that confidence, goes back, to all that, and just realizing that, some people are just gonna tell you no. But then there's also, like a finesse to getting people to really understand and sit down and really, resonate with their product. So, it takes a couple of things. I think that comes with like learning time and experience. But definitely that's something that, all entrepreneurs, whatever you have, definitely to keep in mind. Like, if they say no, don't take it personally. Kind of like, Nova said, like, you can detach yourself a little bit from it. Even though it's yours, you worked on it, detach yourself a little bit from it. So when you're selling it to someone or trying to pitch it to someone, so you don't have those feelings of discouragement, like, oh, they don't want my product, that means it must be bad, I must be doing this. Like, you don't want any of those negative thoughts, right? You just want to be like, all right, next. Because someone is going to want it, right?
That's right.
So
absolutely.
I think that's definitely important to understand. So moving on to the next post, it is again on Instagram. This is by Prince Donnell. So Prince Donnell, he actually owns a tax company called Jumpin' Jacks Tax. Again, I found him through EYL, and in this video, it's titled "Don't Let Your Mistakes Diminish Your Confidence." Playing words with confidence. But essentially throughout the video, he's just talking about, stories as an entrepreneur where maybe, you make a mistake or you have certain failures, and not letting that kind of goes back to confidence, right? Not letting those mistakes, failures, shortcomings, get in the way of, your confidence, either in yourself, in your product, or what you do, right? So, we discussed it a little bit earlier. Nova, she went up to the publisher, right? And she explained her idea, saying like, hey, I want to open up a magazine. And having that, dismissed feeling, like it could have been easy for, for her to, oh, I don't want to do it anymore. Maybe she's right, and go away with that. But instead, it's being able to take those, if you want to call it an L, right? If you want to be able to take those experiences and turn them into a positive, and turn them and be like, hey, this is what is going to motivate me now, right? So it's important to whatever, business venture, whatever your brand is, whatever you're promoting, trying to sell, right? Whatever that you do, that those mistakes and those, L's or those feelings of discouragement, they will come as an entrepreneur. Like I mentioned earlier, it's a series of lots of highs and lots of lows. It's just nature of the game, right? And it's not about the highs and lows, because those will come. It's more about how you react, right? I think that is where, the winners, those where people succeed, is the reaction. Like, are you going to get cocky when things are going well and then make dumb mistakes? Or are you going to get, discouraged when things are going bad and then, give up? Or are you just going to take it for what it is and be like, hey, sometimes things don't sell. Maybe sometimes, things sell a lot. But it's how can we just move on to the next play? What can we do for the next play? What can we do the next day as well? So that's my take on it. And Edom, you can give your piece on that, and then we'll go to Nova after.
Honestly, you said a lot of what I was actually saying, but definitely a lot of people think mistakes are the end of everything, and just like Nova said, being able to detach yourself from, I wouldn't say, at least the whole idea of detaching yourself wouldn't work too much in this case, but not letting it get in your head too much and distract you or discourage you from wanting to continue moving on and going forward in your endeavors. And I lost my train of thought.
That's all right.
I had a big point coming up. I had
it was coming.
Oh, that's crazy. That I really blanked.
Wow. All right. Well, it'll come back. It'll come back. Nova, do you have a piece?
Yeah, well, in the segment that I saw, he opened it up with a story about Kobe Bryant and missing, I believe, 5 shots that could have allowed them to win the game. I think it was a championship game.
Yeah.
And he just was like, okay, moving on, next. And I think that's what we have to do. Of course, you don't want to take major mistakes lightly, and I've had many. But you will survive. And, as Eden said, it's not about the highs and lows. It's about the journey. And Kobe, how he answered the different people that were coming up to him saying, are you okay?
Yeah.
How do you feel? Like, you're just like, oh, I just missed 5 baskets. There's going to be another game. There's going to be another tournament.
Yeah.
He was excited and passionate about the journey. And he knew that if you're going to be playing basketball for however many years, or you're going to have, however many games, you're going to have missed baskets. It just so happened that 5 came in a row.
Yeah.
It's just what, But it also probably made him stronger.
Yeah.
And I think that, as I'm a parent and I can speak on this as parents, we get so caught up in the concept of perfection and winning now and all the time. But really it's our failures in which force us to grow. It's coming up from those lows that make us look back and appreciate how far we've come. And so it's almost embracing those moments to say, well, you know what? We're not meant to stay on the bottom. We're not meant to be in a low space. So that means something great is coming. It can only go up from here. Kobe knew something great was coming. If he was going to have 5 missed baskets in a row, okay, all right, well, I know that I'm looking forward to something that's going to be better than this.
Yeah.
And I can aim for something. And what did I learn from this? Maybe he's practicing his shots, whatever it is. And so I think that if we see failure as a moment of growth, and maybe it's a moment of reflection, then we can adjust better and not get so emotionally impacted by the failures and saying, oh, what can I learn from this? Okay, yeah, give yourself those 5 minutes, those 5 hours, no more than 5 days, okay, to sulk or whatever. But then, you know what? Let's go.
Yeah.
Stop pitying yourself. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. Yeah, it happened. It happened for a reason. Are you going to learn something from it? Or you're going to let it, keep you down. And so perspective is huge. And so I think that it's really positioning ourselves to say, embrace those moments of, when your stomach drops as you're, going down the roller coaster ride. It's coming. You just embrace for it and you say, all right, time to go up, time to chill, and you're going up and you're going up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think if more entrepreneurs, more children, I guess, early on are taught this, and then young adults and entrepreneurs are saying, just brace yourself for those moments. And when you are there, take those few minutes that you need to acknowledge that punch in the gut, and then say, all right, well, what am I gonna learn from this, or how can I, rise from this, and yeah, that's my take on it.
Definitely. So, Edom, do you have any final remarks?
Yes, it came back to me. He mentions in the video how on top of the whole failure thing, he knows his audience, so he doesn't fail as much as he used to. And I just want to build off that, like, on top of knowing your product and knowing what you have to offer, you also need to understand your audience and who you plan on marketing to.
Excellent point.
Let's say like a clothing line or a business who you could market that to almost everybody. Whereas a business podcast like we have right here, it may not apply or interest many people from in our age group, between like maybe 18 and 23. It's not going to reach as many as a clothing line would. Only those who are really, in tune with podcasts or business podcasts per se would be more inclined to come sit here and click and subscribe and listen every week. So if you're out here marketing to every Tom, Dick, and Harry on the street, you may not get that satisfaction or that success that you've been looking for, and knowing who you plan on marketing to will help a great deal in that. So that's my final take.
That is amazing. Great point. I think we could have a whole different episode talking about target markets. That was a really amazing point, and that's very true. You have to know who you're reaching out to, because if you're reaching out to the wrong people, you may catch those L's and those rejections. But if you're reaching out to the people who you should be or who would be interested, then you'll probably see a lot more love, and you will see a lot more love from that audience. So
absolutely.
So that concludes that. I want to thank Nova. Thank you very much for joining us this episode. It was amazing.
This was fun. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Thank you. Amazing. Edom, thank you again, co-host. So all our listeners, make sure you're checking us out on all platforms. Again, that's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, at Everybody Eats. And Nova, how can people learn more about either you, your magazine? Where can they reach out to you?
Absolutely. RaineMagazine.com. That's Raine with an E at the end, RAINE magazine.com. We're also on most of your socials at Raine Magazine. So you can reach me there. Email us at editors@Raine Magazine for any story ideas. We are always looking for anyone that we feel are the next big names in fashion, culture, and technology.
All right, you hear it here. Thank you again for joining us. We'll see you guys next week.
Thank you.